Not all tie knots are created equal, so which ones do we think are better left undone? As always, we're approaching today's topic from the perspective of classic style. So don't consider our condemnation of the tie knots on this list to be a condemnation of you and your personal style. In other words, if you'd like to wear them, more power to you. But if you'd like to dress in accordance with classic style, know that these knots won't be your best choices. We'll be discussing both how to tie or not tie knots, and how to pair them with elements of your outfit, in addition to discussing some specific knots. So if you'd like to see me attempt the Lovecraftian horror of the Eldredge knot, stick around. With all that said then, we've assembled a list for today, and we'll start with the first type of knot that you should avoid, which is a knot not suited to your collar. Tie knots should be selected to properly suit your collar type and its dimensions, meaning that they shouldn't be bulging underneath the leaves of your collar or minutely cowering between them. Ideally then, they should be proportional to the amount of space between your collar points, commonly referred to as the tie space. Popular and easy tie knots like the 4-in-hand, or slight variations of the 4-in-hand like the Kelvin knot, are good middle ground knot choices that will harmonize with a wide array of collars. But if you're wearing a spread collar, then something like a Pratt or Shelby knot would be a better choice, and for the more extreme cutaway collar, you're definitely going to want a larger knot like the full Windsor. On the other hand, if you're wearing a narrow collar, or something like a spear point collar, then either of these two knots are going to look large and disproportionate in this case. In general, just remember that you don't want your knot to be deforming the leaves of your collar, or for the neckband portion of the knot to be openly visible. But for even more information on how to properly pair necktie knots with shirt collars, you can consult our full video on that subject. The next necktie knot to avoid is one that isn't properly suited to your face shape. Knot size and density should reflect and complement your face shape and size. This means that if you select the right tie knots and shirt collars for your face, it will make your face look better. This may require you to experiment beyond just the basic medium-sized knots. If you have a square face, for instance, then picking longer and narrower collars with smaller knots like the 4-in-hand will be a good choice. Meanwhile, oblong faces will often benefit from a spread or cutaway collar with a half Windsor or full Windsor knot. A good rule of thumb then is to aim for a knot and collar pairing that is generally opposite to your overall face shape to create balance. Obviously, your face is a complex feature with many different elements, so you'll get the most benefit not just from listening to these tips, but actually directly experimenting with different collars and knots. Sometimes doing things a bit differently and breaking the rules can still have a pleasing effect, so don't be afraid to try out a variety of knots and collars to see what works best for you and your face. The next type of knot we dislike is a knot that's not suited to your necktie. There's nuance behind the material and dimensions of the fabric in a tie that makes some knot choices better than others. For example, if you have a chunky knit or thick grenadine tie, then a full Windsor knot is probably going to create too much bulk at your collar, while something like a 4-in-hand knot will create more balance. And conversely, a wide 1970s necktie of over 5 inches in width is going to look disproportionate if the small oriental knot was used to tie it. In simplest terms, your tie's materials and construction should be counteracted by the knot you choose to tie for a balanced effect. Is your tie made from a heavy fabric or with a thick interlining? Then choose a smaller knot. Is your tie made from a lighter fabric with a thin interlining or no interlining at all? Then go for a larger knot. And make sure that the knot you tie is also harmonious with the tie's overall width. 1960s skinny ties, for instance, tend to tie full Windsor knots that look rectangular and just somewhat odd. So, leveraging the natural qualities of your tie's materials and construction is a great way to take your outfits to the next level. For instance, I selected the tie knot I'm wearing today in accordance with the other elements of my outfit. In today's video, the tie I'm wearing is from our own brand, Fort Belvedere, in wool challis featuring tones of marigold yellow and brick red. Because wool challis is on the thicker side, and in combination with the interlining of the tie, in addition to the fact that I'm also wearing a narrower point collar, I've gone for the relatively small 4-in-hand knot to tie today. Because ties are the main focus of today's video, I wanted the tie to be a star, and therefore the other elements of my outfit are relatively sedate. My white shirt has, as mentioned, a narrow point collar and barrel cuffs. And I've gone for a simple navy blue suit from Suit Supply, with its bit of character coming from peaked lapels and a slight texture in its weave. My shoes are in dark brown museum calf, and they're moccasin-toed single monk straps. The remaining elements of my outfit are also from Fort Belvedere, and these would include my socks, also in navy blue and featuring clock patterns of blue and white, my peach spray rose boutonniere, and my pocket square in a wool-silk blend featuring a base color of antique gold ochre and geometric medallions in beige, red, and blue with a cream contrast edge. The socks, of course, harmonize with my suit and shirt, and the pocket square and boutonniere are meant to harmonize with the tie, tying the whole outfit together. Finally here, for a fragrance today, I've gone for Azzurro from the Roberto Ugolini collection. Yes, Italians, I know that you consider dark navy blue and light Azzurro to be different colors, but they're still roughly in the same color family, so I considered it an appropriate fragrance choice today. You can find this fragrance and the accessories I'm wearing today in our Fort Belvedere shop, but more on that later. In the meantime, let's get back to our list of tie knots we would sooner avoid. That brings us on to item number 4, poorly executed knots. Sloppy, half-hearted knots give the overall impression that you've only put on your tie grudgingly. We should note, though, that this is different from a well-knotted tie that's just been loosened a little, which can, under the right circumstances, give off an air of nonchalance or rat-pack cool with an unbuttoned top button. But an outright sloppy necktie knot was definitely not Frank's way. An asymmetrical tie knot can work for you under the right circumstances, as plenty of tie knots are naturally asymmetrical. But as with many things in classic style, you should thoroughly understand the so-called rules before you can be confident in breaking them. In most cases then, and certainly in business or other formal settings, tie your chosen knot firmly, keep your collar button buttoned, and make sure your knot sits snugly between your collar leaves with no gapping. By the way, a sloppy appearance can also be caused by ties that are left knotted all the time. You can avoid this simply by untying your tie when you're finished wearing it to tie a new knot the next time you'd like to wear it. Next up is item number 5, obviously affected knots. There are more casual ways of tying your necktie that ironically contribute to more of a statement look that have become popular among those going for a sprezzatura method of dress. Think of things like slightly crooked or angled necktie knots, or narrow back tie blades worn longer than the front blade and hanging free of the keeper loop. If you choose to break these rules intentionally, that is acceptable and sometimes even encouraged. But don't adopt unusual styling conventions just because you've seen people like celebrities or fashion influencers do so. This can come off as affected and look like you're trying too hard to be part of the hashtag menswear community. Instead, as with any other element of dressing, just do it because you like to and you think it looks good on you, not because you're trying to fit in with anybody else. Finally on our list today, we come to our 6th type of tie knot that we're not the biggest fans of, novelty knots. These knots are meant to supercharge your creative expression and really bring it to the forefront. They peaked in popularity during the 2010s and were seen all over social media and even on TV. Some were even spawned by mass media, with examples seen in the Matrix films or more recently the John Wick films. For some men, these fun, unexpected knots were their entry into menswear. And getting more men into menswear is always a good thing in our book, so for that reason, we can't dismiss them entirely. And if your personal style does include knots like these, we're not opposed to you wearing them if you like them. But again, be aware that they're not really compatible with classic style in most cases, and are best suited for a costume party or an outfit that's more whimsical than truly formal or dressed up. With that said then, let's get a little naughty and run down some of these most popular novelty knots and the few edge cases where you might consider wearing them. We'll start here with the granddaddy of novelty knots, the Onassis knot. This one actually predates the novelty knot craze, worn occasionally in the mid-20th century by business magnate Aristotle Onassis. Have you ever looked at a necktie and wondered, what if it were an ascot instead? Well, you wouldn't be the only one. As the wider blade of the tie simply drapes over the front, this knot takes a lot of inspiration from how you'd tie an ascot. But it can look off with a buttoned-up collar. So if you like the casual aesthetic of an ascot, just wear an ascot instead. I've even seen people use safety pins with this knot so that the overall shape more closely mirrors that of a conventional necktie knot, but this seems to somewhat defeat the purpose of the knot. Still, if you happen to be jet-setting on the Riviera, perhaps you could give this one a try. Next is the Trinity knot, which attempts to add visual interest to the conventional shape of a necktie knot, but the effect is very affected. The intricacies of the folds in this knot draw the viewer's eye directly to the knot itself and not to your face. This, by the way, is a consequence of most novelty knots. You could perhaps wear it at a St. Patrick's Day party or a Celtic or Renaissance festival, but otherwise, we'd avoid it. Next is the cape knot. As the saying goes, not all heroes wear capes, and we think this should also be true of your tie. Because part of the knot is framed by the back blade, the overall effect of this knot can look somewhat muddled. It creates an awkward combination without a crisp contrast. Remember, the point of a well-executed necktie knot is to serve as a subordinate focal point that draws attention not directly to the knot itself, but to your face. Still, you could bust this one out at a comic convention. As promised, we now come to the Eldredge knot. For many men, just figuring out how to tie this thing is an eldritch horror. The appeal of a knot like the 4-in-hand or Windsor is that they come across as effortlessly put together with only one panel of fabric holding the knot. Meanwhile, this knot almost goes out of its way to show how difficult to tie it is, meaning that it would be more at home in a sci-fi outfit than one for conventional menswear. But if you've got an H.P. Lovecraft-themed party to attend, then give this one a shot. Finally here, if you thought a full Windsor knot was too bulky, well, just wait until you see the Rose Bloom knot. It even puts the mighty Balthus knot to shame. While florals in menswear are underutilized, there are certainly better places that you can incorporate them into your outfits than in your tie knot. We've got a video directly on this subject, or for the simplest solution, you could just opt to wear a boutonniere. This knot, on the other hand, is quite messy and isn't going to play nicely with most collars to begin with. You could maybe try this one if you're riding on a float in the Rose Bowl parade. Otherwise, we're stumped here. And as for me trying to tie it, I think it's time we wrap this video up. This knot can be a thorn in my side for another day. So, with neckwear, as with many other things, the tried and true conventions of classic style exist for a reason. Avoiding the mistakes we've outlined in today's video will help keep you and your ties looking their best and prevent you from looking like one of the Merovingian's lackeys. Still, we'd like to know, do you feel differently about any of the novelty knots we mentioned in today's video, or have times and places where you'd like to wear them? Let us know in the comments, and we'll do our best to tie up loose ends. And, as mentioned previously, you can find all of the Fort Belvedere accessories I'm wearing in today's video, including my tie, pocket square, boutonniere, and socks, as well as a wide array of other classic men's accessories, corduroy trousers, and fragrances from the Roberto Ugolini collection by visiting the Fort Belvedere shop here.